What's going on, everybody? It is May 2nd, 2018. I'm Savino. This is Sushi Talks. And what we're going to be talking about today is part 2 of how to know that your song is master ready or ready to be sent out for mastering. Yesterday we talked about it needs to have a groove, the song needs to open up, the mix needs to be balanced sonically, the verse should be distinguished from the chorus, as well as the sounds occupy their own space, sound should have texture, there's a vibe to the song, the drums knock, as well as the mix feels musical. So, building off of those points, what I'm first going to talk about today to know how your song is ready to be sent out for mastering is you went through the process of editing. Editing means maybe the doubles of the vocals don't line up necessarily perfect or close enough to the lead voice, so you have to zoom in and adjust that with the snap off and try to make that both sound samples line up perfectly. It could mean the same thing with doing that for harmonies, doing that for ad-libs. Maybe the ad-libs are a little offbeat. Maybe you're recording a live band and then there's certain points where the drums are a little offbeat. You have to zoom in and try to chop up everything at the beginning of the sample and try to line it up so that it's in sync with the rest of the band. Especially if you're recording a band that's not playing with a metronome. You know, you're going to run into cases like that. I think it's better if artists or bands do play with a metronome, unless they're like exceptional without it. But most of the, if there's a band that never practices with the metronome, it's probably better if you just record them without the metronome and just tell them to start practicing with that, so there's more things you could do in the recording process after with the editing, and that won't be as time consuming or as cost as much. So yeah, editing also mean as far as maybe the music's offbeat and you have to line that up. It could be certain parts the vocals get too quiet and no type of compression, gain reduction, anything that could fix that. So you would have to zoom in, chop up that word, and raise that so it's kind of closer in volume with the words before it and the words after it. Unless they're trying, even if they're being quieter in tone, that's another thing. I find that even if if the artist gets really quiet with their tone, dynamically, and then they get loud right after that, if you raise up the volume of the quiet part to kind of still match where the loud part is, it'll seem like the artist has even more control of their voice. It'll even make them sound more confident because you can hear the word clearly, and it seems like the voice is more, the breath control is steadier. If an artist could get to that level without needing to do all the editing, that's right on. That's awesome. Editing can also entail to song structure. Maybe the chorus, you feel like the chorus should repeat twice instead of just one time in the last portion of the song. So what you do is you would copy and paste that whole segment twice, Maybe you need to do something like that. Or maybe it is, or just something's wrong with the verse, or even chopping up the beat, There's certain parts in rap songs, particularly, or dance songs, where there's a lot of drops. You cut the beat out. It's just maybe the voice is the only thing left. Certain things like that is what you would do in the editing part. Another example of how you know that the song is master ready is that the song has an emotion. The emotions is a broad spectrum. It can range everything from heavy metal, which would be more on the aggressive side. Not violent, because music's not violent, but like it definitely is more, it's got the anger to it, that aggression, just the attitude, that's more on that side of the spectrum. When you got that like Call Me Maybe song, or Rebecca Black or some shit on the totally opposite side, that would be more like bubblegum pop. It's like pop as it gets, stuff like that. So anywhere in there, in between that, you could create your own emotions. You could try to capture the feeling of a really complex emotion that you can't quite describe, Maybe maybe it's just it could be more of making sad music. You know, maybe you had you just feel like you're down in the dumps or whatever, and that's your outlet to express that. Or it's the exact opposite. You're a really cheerful person or something, but you still can use that as an outlet to get out those other types of expressions, you know? And, you know, it's all just your imagination, really, how you capture the song. And it's another thing, too. It's like you might be going for one type of expression, but based off the listener's own perspective, their own experiences, whatever else is going on, there's a billion factors, infinite factors, really. You know, that will maybe change their own perception of what the song is supposed to mean or what the song is supposed to feel like. So I wouldn't dwell too much on how the song feels. Just make sure it has some type of emotion. You know, if you're trying to make a party song, then make sure it's some type of feel good. It's got good energy to it. It's got a bounce to it. If it's going to be some darker stuff, then maybe it should sound more chill, more ambient, more spacious, more eerie. So those are some cool ideas to think about. Another way to know that the mix is finished and that it's ready to be sent out for mastering, damn flies, is you used all the tools that you deem necessary for the mix. Whether it's using compression to kind of like a sandpaper, flatten out all the peaks, all the transients to make the vocals sound smoother, for instance, depending on how if you use like a quicker attack, quicker release. And basically that will like make the louder parts and the softer parts kind of blend a little bit better, as well as whatever manual editing you need to do, and maybe automation. But yeah, so compression, maybe use that you like the volume of the hi-hats, but you just felt like they're fighting with the voice too much. So use compression to smooth out the hi-hats so they're kind of set farther in the background, opposed to the vocals being close. Another thing is EQ. EQ is basically sound design. It is purely up to your imagination. I prefer going light with the EQ unless I'm trying to do something on purpose, like some type of dramatic filtered effect. You know, but I know some people really like going in, cutting out all the low end of all the stuff that doesn't need low end, and cutting out all the high end of the stuff that doesn't need high end. I don't personally do that. I like the sounds that I pick out, so I don't really feel like I need to change them much, you know? I do a lot of the editing before I even through the input when I record in, so by the time I need to get to mixing, I don't need to do too much. Now working with other people's projects that they bring me in their own instrumentals, then I might have to go into the playbook and start doing some crazy cuts if I deem it necessary. Same thing with reverb. Reverb's a great way to create a three-dimensional space in the mix. It's a great way to glue the mix together. It's a great way to create a vibe if the song is lacking a vibe. Adding reverb in a strategic way can actually change the whole entire feeling of the song. It's kind of like a time machine where it could slow down a song as well as speed up a song depending on how you use the reverb. If it's more of a slapback, it might seem like the song's speeding up, compared to if it's like a really long drawn out reverb and decay, it might feel like it's really all over the place and kind of messy. And that could create kind of like a dreamlike state, you know? Another thing, saturation if you deem necessary. That will help bring out some of the harmonics in the mix, as well as drive some of the sounds closer to the listener. You got also other type of effects like flange, phasers, anything like that. So ring modulators, there's all different type of plugins you could kind of put. Those are good options to try to maybe color the hook separate to distinguish it from the verse. That'd be a good way to do that. It's also a good way to add some energy or some confidence, or to even bring out vibe if you deem that's kind of what you want in the song, you know? You have to be conscious at all times of what you're doing. That's one of the biggest challenges in mixing. It's, you know, one, you're racing time, and then the other thing is that, do you love the idea because you love the idea, or does it actually make it sound better? At the end of the day, it should sound better. A lot of times when I was starting off and I was being a little bit stubborn, I wasn't being stubborn for the right reason. I was kind of being stubborn because I love this idea and I wanted to work when I don't know if it was actually working, and that's what people were trying to tell me. And now it's more of, if I'm going to be stubborn, it's because of I've tried everything, and I just know this is what I was good with the most, you know, and I felt happy with the most. You know, I try to always do a bunch of different tests when I'm mixing. I do it really quick, so I might try 3 different ways the reverb should sound. Or I might EQ it 3 different ways, and then I would pick out my favorite ones. You know, I try to make the decision process really quick. I don't want to give myself much option to think. Because once I think, I'll think of a million different reasons why I could actually fuck up my mix compared to, like, it'll be a negative in a sense, you know. Whereas if I'm not thinking, then I'm just doing, I'm just being, I'm in action, you know. And it sounds so simple, but it's such a significant difference in the way that not only do you making music, you're operating through the world. I try to take that same type of mentality through life, not just in the studio, you know. All right, I'll do one more. So this one's really cool. This is, if it sounds good and it feels good, then you're good. And then there's no issue, right? And that was passed down by the great James Brown. It was awesome seeing him work in the studio in that documentary I watched on HBO. That was really cool. And in it, I think it was like Craig Robinson or something. He was holding like he was in like the horn section, and he was kind of questioning what James Brown was thinking about this brass line being offbeat or, you know, syncopated or something. And he just asked him that. It was, well, does it sound good? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, does it feel good? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, then what's the issue? And I thought that was a really profound moment, just even watching the documentary, that it opened my eyes to a lot of great opportunities that I was missing before, because I was kind of looking at it from, I don't know if it was a negative perspective, but it wasn't, and I don't know if it was a positive perspective either. It was just, it was a different perspective, and that perspective was kind of limiting me in what I could do with my own creativity. So when I heard that, that was kind of like an epiphany, like an aha moment, you know. These things like that are common sense. And I was just talking about this with one of my buddies the other day about common sense, and it's like, common sense is a lot of times, it's the ability to do right without knowing, right? Without needing to read a book or anything like that, you just know how to do it. And a lot of times when you hear certain things like that, that truth that, like, that's in your DNA, you know, that's when you're like, ah, yeah, it makes so much sense. You know, that is those moments. And I think that definitely goes through with that one time I learned that cool idea. Does it sound good? Does it feel good? Then there's no issue. All right? So yeah, I have a few more points, but I'll talk about those in another video. I hope you guys have a great day. I have to get to some sessions now, all right? Later.